Hey everyone, welcome to my video solution on Bounty Hunter from HackTheBox, an easy rated machine. Since this box is easy, I'm going to be explaining a few basic concepts just so those who are new to HackTheBox can understand them. So I've run rustscan. Rustscan is basically a tool which is it does port scanning, basically tells him what's running on the web application on the box. And when I say box, I mean the host. And what is running? Well, that could basically be like a web application, so a web server. It could be SSH, which is used for remote administration. It could be an FTP server, which is used for like file storage and management. So yeah, we want to basically see what's on the machine, right? Along with that, I've also provided some arguments. So here I say, hey, I want you to run some default scripts. Basically, nmap will run scripts on certain ports to basically enumerate them. It's a handy way of basically getting extra data, and sometimes you can find vulnerabilities. Then enumerate versions basically tells you what version of things are running. We can see here from the output we have two ports open, 22 and 80. 22 is SSH in most cases, and 80 is HTTP. This is just how they are mostly, but it doesn't mean they definitely are. It's always worth checking. Let's go ahead and check now. This is a normal nmap output you'll probably see, so to get used to seeing this. So when you look at 22 or SSH, basically what you're looking for is basically the version, and looking at bits and pieces like here aren't too important, but there will be cases where you do actually need to pay attention to that. That's a bit beyond the scope of this this video, and also won't really be actually supporting in the exploitation. Next, we have a web server on 80. You can see it's running Apache, and we want to go ahead and look at some more information on Ubuntu as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run some tooling here. I'm going to run what's called gobuster. Basically, what gobuster does is it enumerates the directories on a system. So, for example, we might have like google.com/search, google.com/login, google.com/admin. This will basically do the same, but on our desired web application. In this case, it's here. We hit enter on here, and basically what it will do is it run a bunch of word lists against the server. Then I'm going to run whatweb, which will basically just tell me what's running on the machine. In terms of technology, so for example, is it Apache, is it Ubuntu, is it IIS, IIS being the Microsoft version of the web server. We can see here it's running Apache 2.4.41, Bootstrap, not that important, it's running Ubuntu, and that's all we really know. Okay, so let's go ahead and look here. We can see there are some results. We're getting some 403s and also some 200s. We can see straight away this is PHP, and also Apache runs PHP, so it's possible this is definitely going to be a PHP application. So I'm going to go over to the host. Now, before I can go over to the host, I need to go ahead and set it in my host file. Now, basically what that means is if I want to access the host using this host name, I need to tell my system what that looks like. So my etsy host file I have here, etsy hosts. So what we want to go ahead and do is basically add in the host entry, the IP, and the host name to our etsy hosts. You will need to do this using sudo or root, otherwise it won't work. There will be cases where the name of this matters in terms of, say, it's an Apache virtual host routing, but in most cases it won't matter. For example, an Apache might have a host root set with, say, bountyhunter dev.bountyhunter.htb, and if you don't have it set, I won't redirect you to that location. So it's important to know those virtual host names, but in this case it won't really matter massively. Well, it's really just used as a friendly name for the time being, but there will be cases where it does actually matter in the sense of, say, Apache virtual host routing. Okay, so I've already added this to my etsy host, so we can go ahead and look at it. I go ahead and type in bounty hunter, and hit enter, and here we have basically a very standard web application. If I scroll up and down, you can see these highlights, so really it's a very basic web app. Not much else here. If I go ahead and check out portal, we get a very basic paste in portal and development. Go here to test my bounty tracker. We'll hit the middle click on the mouse to go to over here. I'm going to hit back here. Now, before we can carry on, I want to go ahead and just stress that we're using something called burpsuite. What I've done basically in burpsuite is it's a tool used to basically intercept web traffic. I won't do a video how to set this up today, but I will probably do one in future. But basically what it does is all traffic gets routed through burp on port 8080 and gets routed to this tool called burpsuite. If I go ahead and hit intercept here, and go ahead and hit refresh, you can see the HTTP request is caught here. Okay, so let's leave that for the moment, but we can at least look at what burp has found. If we go over to sitemap, we can see here in the bounty hunter, we have a few bits and pieces. We have that portal we saw before, and the folder resources. If burp lets me click it, there we go. There's a few bits and pieces in here, just in case it just, checking what's on there. Anything interesting? I bet it's being a little bit slow for some reason, I'm not sure why. Anyway, we'll leave it for the moment because it's not that important. Okay, so we're on here. Let's go ahead and check out this portal. Okay, so let's say we didn't have burp and we want to see what happens when we submit requests. Let's go ahead and look at that. So we go inspect element. This will work in Firefox or Chrome, whatever. But I like Firefox most since it's the cleanest, at least in my opinion. I'm going to go ahead and submit something like title. The reason I'm using the word title is because it says exploit title here. And I want to know when the data goes through, you know, what to expect. CWE, and then CVS score would see like, I don't know, 10, and then bounty order 337. Let's go ahead and hit submit. Now in this case, we're not intercepting, we're merely just sending the data. Let's hit submit. Okay, now we can see here that we've made a post request to this file, this PHP file, and we got 200. Let's go ahead and click it and go to see what we sent. So we sent a few headers, nothing that interesting from what I can see. Go to cookies, down in cookies, request. Okay, we can see we sent some data. Okay, interesting. Have a look at the response. We didn't get anything that we can see too well here. If we scroll down here, we can see actually the data is there. Basically, what it's done is it's sent our input and it's reflected it back on the page. Okay, so let's have a look at what we sent. So I could use burp for this, but I'm going to use just purely a browser for the moment. Let's go ahead and copy this. And I'm going to use burp in other cases, but in this case I'm not going to. So I'm going to go ahead and use CyberChef. Now CyberChef basically is a tool that can be used to do a number of different encoding, decoding, encryption, etc. bits and pieces. In this case, I've got this data, right? And I don't know what it is, but I assume based on the fact that it ends in equals, that it's probably going to be base 64, okay? And in my case, I was right. If I go ahead and remove this, we don't have anything. If I go ahead and say from base 64, we'll then decode it and we get some kind of XML data. XML data is basically just a format of data that can be human and machine readable, where we can basically separate data out, and it's a way of basically describing something in a very nice way for computers and humans to understand it. Okay, so in our case, basically what we're doing is we sent the data title CWE 10 and 1337. Clearly the application has taken that data and it has then converted it into XML and then sent it. Okay, that's interesting. So let's go ahead and try this again, except let's go ahead and try and mess with this data, right? So let's go ahead and go back over to where we were. We'll go ahead and cancel this. I want to go ahead and click here, intercept, go over to submit. Okay, now we can see the data. Let's go ahead and copy this. Let's go into decoder, paste it in here. Now burp decoder basically lets decode stuff like CyberChef, except not as many features. We're going to go to decode as URL, basically to get rid of any of the URL bits and pieces. You can see here there's a %3d. That basically is URL encoded equal sign. We want to go and URL decode that. Then what we want to go ahead and do is then go to decode as base64, and then now we can see the XML data that we saw previously over here. There we go. Okay, cool. So now if we go ahead and edit something, so let's go, we change this to say like reward will be, I'll look at the reward at the same one, we'll change the title to subscribe, okay? Yep, and what we want to go ahead and do now is we want to go and encode as base64. We're going to go ahead and copy this, Control C, and then what we're going to do is right click this and send to repeater. I'm going to go ahead and paste this in here. Now this won't work, and you'll see why. You'll see it won't work in a second. We'll hit send, and nothing's come back. You should get the title subscribe, but we didn't. Why? Well, that's because our data isn't URL encoded. If we go to control, the character control, the key control, and then type in Control U, it will then encode it. You can see here there's %2b. By Control V, Control Z, that you see this plus gets converted into the %2b. If I go ahead and hover over this and do Control Shift U, it then goes back to a plus. And we can also do the same thing if I just copy this, right click, go to Convert Selection, URL, encode all key characters, and hit send. Okay, and now we should see some data comes back, title, subscribe. Okay, interesting, so that worked, awesome. Go ahead and try it again, didn't work. Go ahead and do it with the URL encode, and it worked. Okay, sweet, so that's cool. So where do we go from here? Well, with XML data, there comes into play what's called XXE, XML External Entity Injection. Now, if you haven't heard of that, basically what that means is XML supports you to be able to refer to external entities in the sense of you can refer to a variable, and that variable can be the value of, say, the contents of a file, or the output of a command, or something like that. And if it is enabled in the DTD document type definition, I believe it stands for. Basically, what that means is you can refer to variables, and variables can be the value of those variables can be set as say opening a file. All right, so let's go ahead and try and see if we can mess with this. Now I'm going to go ahead and simply just Google xxe hack tricks. This one will do. So I know this page works, and also it's just a very handy page, hack tricks. I swear by this guy, his content is clean and easy to read. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control F. Now, because I know the page is PHP, because I can see here we have a .php, I'm going to go ahead and look for PHP-based ones, PHP. And also in our request itself, we can see derb priv314.php. Right? I'm going to go ahead and go over to here. Now we can see here we have the second case should be useful to extract a file if the web server is using PHP, not the case supports Wiggles Labs. What that means basically is if it's using PHP and it's vulnerable to xxe, maybe this will work. Okay, let's go ahead and try this. Right, I'm going to go ahead and copy this, go into my burpsuite, go into my decoder. I'm going to go ahead and just add a new line here and paste this there. Right, and what I want you to do basically, I need to look at how this works and what I need to change. So here we have the entity example, right? I need to basically go ahead and change. I need to go ahead and basically refer to this example. Now you'll see on the web application on the website at HackTricks it uses and the name of the variable semicolon. So we can go ahead and do that. Except we're going to use our own version. We're going to go ahead and change this to subscribe. I'm going to put an and sign and then semicolon. Okay, go ahead to encode as base64. Go ahead and control. Now we could go ahead and encode as URL, but that will basically make it really not very nice to read, so I don't like that. So we'll stick to this way. Go to repeater, go to copy, paste here, go to hover, right click, convert selection, URL, encode all key characters, and hit enter. Now in this case, you'll see we actually get some base64 code back. Well, at least we know it's base64 because in our thing we actually said, okay, we want you to PHP filter convert base64 encode resource. In this case, basically what we're doing is we are actually referring to the file etsy password. So in my case, cat etsy password like this. And we're basically taking the output of that and we're passing it into base64 like this. Right? And you can see basically that the top should probably look very similar to, so we have cm9vd. If I go ahead and cat the normal one, you can see here we have like root :x. And you'll see here, we have the same in our response in our repeater, cm9, because basically root is the very, very first entry in the cat etsy hosts. Okay, let's go ahead and copy this and take it, right? I'm going to go ahead and copy it, Control C, go ahead back into my cybershaft, Control, paste, and now we can see we have, we can see the etsy password. Now, the etsy password is useful, one, because it's always present on a Linux system, at least most of the time, and two, because we can see what users there are. In our case, we can see there's a development user. Well, but how do you know there's a development user? Well, one, I can see the name, and two, if I do /home, we can see that there's a syslog with a home, and there's a development user with a home. That basically tells us there are two users with a home. And I would put my money on the developer account being a real account, and also this account has been bashed, meaning it basically has a shell. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and try and escalate further. So we can basically read that file, but I want to go ahead and do some more. I want to basically automate this whole process, right? So this next step is you can skip it, but I advise you watch it for the sake of learning, because you might actually learn how to build some scripts for this. And I'm rambling on. Okay, let's go ahead and basically build some scripts, right? Let's go ahead and do code xxe dump.py. And really this is going to do a few things, right? So we need to basically define what everything does. We need to basically go ahead and define make request. Make request. Yep. So basically that will make the request to web server. Then we need to go ahead and define the basically getting the input. So we need to go ahead and like say like XML to base64. That will basically just convert our XML code to base64. And then basically this will be passed into this. And then we need to go ahead and then take the response of that and then decode it. So we need to go ahead and get the response. So basically get its contents here, get this. Well, let's call it, I don't know, we'll get response. Cool. And then dev decode. That should be okay. Cool. Okay, so basically what this will do is we will pass in some XML code, take the response of that, and then send that into a request. So for example, this here, this is us making a request, and this is what we're going to generate beforehand. And then we want to then go ahead and take the response of that, and then take the bit we want, so in our case this bit, and then we want to then go ahead and decode it. So first of all, let's write the code to basically make the request in the first place, right? So let's go ahead and use burpsuite to do this work for us, right? So let's go ahead and go into burpsuite. I'm going to go ahead and right click. I'm going to go ahead and go to extensions, and you might not have this extension in your burp. So basically, if you want it, go ahead over to your extender, go into your B app store, and then you should find the copy as requests. If I right click here, copy as Python requests, copy as requests, and you can see here in the extender it should be in here like scan I copy as Python requests. Go ahead and install it and you should be good. Cool. Alright, I now have that in my clipboard, just go ahead and paste it. Cool, it's now in there. We need to make some tweaks first of all. Let's go ahead and remove this import request, put it up here. Cool. We don't need to change we don't need to change this or this, but this we do need to change. I want to go ahead and basically just remove all this XML code. Just by going to double click it, because basically it will grab the majority. Cool. Right, that looks good to me. And we want to go ahead and put like base64 XML. Okay. Cool. And then we want to go ahead and take that as an argument, base64 XML. Like that. And we want to go ahead and return the response. Okay, cool. So that should work. Alright, so now we need to go ahead and basically take the XML code and then convert it into base64, okay? So in my case, my XML code should look like this. All I've done simply is just taken this code that we had before. I don't know where it was. It was in my probably this, no? Basically taking the XML code and it should look like this basically. We saw it before with the subscribe. Basically we're taking this data and we're assigning it to variable, and then we're basically putting in the file name. So let's go ahead and add this in here, file name. So basically what this will do is this is the XML data, and then we're going to obviously substitute the file name in there, and then what we want to go and do then is encode it. We need to go ahead and import base64, base64. Cool. Let's go ahead and then write some code to go ahead and encode it. What this will do, basically we're taking the XML string variable, we're then encoding it to UTF-8, basically because when you base64 encode something, it needs to know what it's encoded with, so it'll work, and then that should all work okay. Unfortunately, I'm not getting syntax highlighting, which makes me think I've messed something up, but it should be okay for the moment. Okay, go ahead and save on there. Basically, we encode it using UTF-8, and then we're base64 encoding it using the base64 module, base64 encode. And then there's also, if I want to encode and decode, I could change that to be that. Okay, cool. That should work. Okay, and then the next thing we want to go do, and basically is go ahead and give that a try. Okay, so let's go ahead and basically run it. So we want to go ahead and first of all, we'll set the file name in our case to be, say, etsy password. Cool. And then we want to go ahead and run this. Cool. Then we want to go ahead and then assign that to be this variable. I know why I'm not getting syntax highlighting, it's a little bit annoying. It makes you think I messed something up. It's okay though for the moment, and then we're going to go ahead and make the request with the response of that, and then we'll see how that goes. Okay, let's go ahead and hit send. Okay, oh, maybe because I messed up an indentation. Possibly? I don't know. It shouldn't mess up my syntax highlighting, but whatever. Let's go ahead and run it again. Okay, no response because we aren't printing anything. Go ahead and just print that out. We'll go ahead and just assign this to the variable the response. And then we can go ahead and print the response. Cool. Go ahead and run. Okay, we're getting a 200. That's because we're not actually printing what we want, so print response.text. Cool. Go ahead and run this again. Okay. You can see here our data's in there. So this is a response basically. If we go ahead and change etsy password to be something that doesn't exist, say we take the s off the password and run it again, you should see we're probably going to get an error like basically no data. If I go ahead and change it to a file that does exist, for example, etsy issue, and hit enter, you can see here we get a little bit of code back. Copy this, echo, pass into base 64, and then -t to decode, and then we can see it's running Ubuntu. Basically what that means is it's working, but we haven't actually done the parsing aspect of it yet. All we've got really is just like the output, which is not great. I want to basically be able to take this and decode it on its own. Okay, let's go ahead and write the next bit of code. Basically will just be the decode. So simply want to go ahead and basically just put in this here. So actually no, we want to go ahead and do the basics for decode first. Not decode, sorry, getting the actual response. So so we want to basically take the data that comes between here and there. Okay, go ahead and copy this. Copy. Go to here. Go to regex 101. Regex 101 basically is a website that will let you kill my intercept. Regex 101 is basically a website that will let you test out your regex, and it will, in my case, will allow me to basically just get my code working. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy this, and go ahead and convert this to Python. Go ahead and just escape any necessary bits. We should be okay for now. What I want to go ahead and do is I want to go ahead and just put this in here to say, hey, I want this to be a capture group, and then now what it'll do is it'll highlight the area. Now this won't work in the sense of like we can't just paste this into Python. I mean, we kind of can, but it's not what I want to do. I want to make it a little bit smarter than that. Okay, we can go ahead and remove the bits we don't need, so we don't really need that. Go ahead and just change this to be there. If I do a \s plus, we should then work. Unless I mess something up. What have I messed up? Let's go ahead and just undo this real quick. Just not sure what I broke. Okay, yeah. Okay, I guess I keep like this for the moment. So that works right now. I'm going to go ahead and remove this. Then it shouldn't work because basically it's not directly next to each other, \s plus. What this will basically do is it will look for a white space character infinitely up to here. In my case, it will basically say, give me white spaces till you find this. If I go ahead and put a few new lines in here, it'll still find it. And we know it works because we have Python set. Okay, so that should now work. Let's go ahead and copy this. Go ahead and let's store this in our mouse pad for the moment, so we can refer to it in a second. Cool. Let's go ahead and write in some code. So basically, what I want to get and do is get the response. So in my case, the response will look something like this. So we're basically using regex. So I need to go and import regex. Basically, what we're doing is we're using the regex module to search, given this regex string, the one we just talked about a second ago. This is what we're searching from, so the text, basically the response.text, which is here. I'm going to go ahead and basically just pass this here. Change this to be there. Cool. And then basically only to ignore case. I know we used slightly different one there. I'm going to go and copy the one we actually used, just so we're keeping it consistent. Go ahead and just paste this here, and that should be cool. Okay, let's go ahead and now say print this. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and basically just sign that to be the base64, and then we're going to print base64. Base64, cool. Hit save. Let's go ahead and try again. Python. So here we got base64. If I go ahead and now change this to be something different. So rather than file name, we're just going to go ahead and put file name equals input like this. Go ahead and do a while loop while true. This basically give me the ability to spam a few. Okay, let's go ahead and hit save. Now if I do say this, I can now be like etsy password. It's going to give me a bunch of data, but it isn't decoded yet. You can try say etsy issue, and it will go, and it will give. I know it glitched out, but it basically will give me what I want. So etsy issue will give me that. I don't know why it's glitching, but it's working. If I tried something that doesn't exist, it's just not going to give me anything. Final step, getting the base64 decoded. Code, simply the opposite of the encode. simply just that. Basics for decode data. We need to go ahead and pass that in there, so we need to go ahead and be like decode. I'm just going to wrap this in that. That should be okay. Go ahead and remove this print statement since we're already doing that. And then just return that. Return. Cool. We'll hit save. We'll now run this. We'll now do say, I don't like that I can't do that, so I'm going to use RL wrap. Basically, I don't like that I can't press up and down for command history. I'm going to use RL wrap. Now I can press up, and it will now tell me what I last typed in. Let's try, say, let's see password, and now we can see it's password. And to prove that it works, we can actually see there's a root user, and there's a development user, which is there. So basically now we have XXE on the machine, remotely. Cool, so now we have basically a way to read the application. We have a way to read the system's local files. So let's go ahead and read some more. So we know that basically the application is running PHP. So let's go ahead and try run something to read the current files. Let's go ahead and look at the directory structure. So we have here, if I go to /index.php, we get the same page because this basically is this is the index. In PHP, basically we'll look for the index page. Index.php doesn't show it in our case, but it basically redirects. Go ahead and try that. Index.php. And here we get some data. So if we actually look, there should be a, see here on the page there's the B team. You can go ahead and see if there's a B team in here. It's a bit hard to find, but basically if we scroll to the top, we'd find it somewhere. Yeah, so we have bounty hunter, security researchers can use burp. Yeah, and then we have the B team. Okay, so what else is there? Let's go ahead and check out our Recon. Well, actually, maybe I probably should have checked my. I should have kept actually my gobuster available to me. Basically, gobuster found a db.php, and actually maybe my burp did too. Let's go ahead and just check. Okay, it didn't find it in here in this case, but it was there. I've obviously gone past it. But let's try db.php. Now the reason we're trying db.php is because it's gobuster found it, or gobuster found it. We want to see what's on there. Cool. So here we can see there's a password and a username. Let's go ahead and try it. So what user do we use? Well, we know from before that there's a developer user because we looked at basically the Etsy hosts and where it relates. So let's go and try that developer at box. Yes, hit paste. Access denied. In our case, maybe I spelled developer wrong. Maybe it's something else. Let's go ahead and just try Etsy password to see what we're looking at. Development, right? Not developer. Development. Okay. Hit paste. And we should be logged in. That delay tells me we're probably logged in. Okay, never mind. Oh, I spelled development wrong. Okay, I know I did wrong. Hit paste, and we should now be in. Okay. Okay, so now we're logged in as development. Okay, so where do we go from here? So the first thing I do whenever I get access to a box via an actual user, when I say an actual user, I don't mean like, I mean like not www data or some other random user, like when I get a shell as a service versus an actual user. Development is an actual user, it has home, it has permissions, it has sudo, that kind of thing. I may or may not have sudo. The point is, www data will often not have sudo since it isn't a user that people log into, whereas development is a normal user. And if I go ahead and echo like shell, for example, okay, in this case I don't have that, but if I go to like env, it should tell me basic environment variables related to this user. For example, we can see here like what shell it's using as. I did lowercase shell, that's why I messed up. We can see here like who we're running as. I'm trying to see if I can put a home in there. But yeah, see we have like the home parameter here. If I was a different user, I might not have a home. Okay, so the first thing I do whenever I get access to a real user, i.e. development in this case, is check for sudo, right? Often I will run enumeration scripts, but in this case, I'm just going to say sudo. Okay, so straight away we can see that I can run sudo -l. So what is sudo? Sudo is basically a Unix thing which allows you to run something as another user. In my case, we can see here that the user development, so my username, may run the following commands on Bounty Hunter, that's the host name, on this system. So root is basically what we're running it as. No password says basically you don't need a password. And then this is what we can run. We can run we can run the Python interpreter, and the Python will interpret this code. Let's go ahead and look at this code, because see, when you have code like this, you're basically opening yourself up to vulnerabilities. Maybe a case where you can actually escape how it's working, and then get, say, code execution or read a file you shouldn't be able to read. Okay, so there's quite a bit of code here. I'm not really interested in trying to determine what this does in the terminal, so I'm going to go ahead and copy. I'm going to go into my vscode. I'm just going to simply paste it and save it as sky.py. Okay, so that's now saved. So let's go ahead and try and figure out what the heck is actually going on. Okay, so as always with Python, we start with main, at least often in most cases. Often you want to look for the first line, which isn't a function. So for example, we have def or like a class or whatever. In our case, the very first line to execute is main. Okay, main. Then main. This then calls the main function, which is defined. Basically, we're going from here to there, and then this will then go here, and then we have another function here called evaluate. So for example, we go from here. So evaluate is called, which then jumps up to evaluate up here, and then when it then returns back to here, if that makes sense. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and carry on. Just turn off my pen. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and try and read the code, right? So we have main. Main calls here. Then we're taking a file name and input. So basically saying, hey, give me a file name, okay? So there's some user input file name. Then we're loading a file. This is basically just a function to open the file and assign it to the ticket. We then pass that ticket, so basically the file object, into the evaluate function. And then we take the result of the evaluate function and we send it to result. And then we print this and that. Okay, so before we get down here, let's first of all evaluate what evaluate does. Okay, let's go ahead and have a look at evaluate. All right, okay, so actually turns out this is actually a function here. So I thought this might be an inbuilt Python thing, but no, actually we need to go ahead and look at this, right? So if I go ahead and click this, I should be able to. It's not letting me right click it. That's weird. I can go to the definition and it tells me it's here. Okay, so the definition load file, basically this takes the lines of code, and it basically is saying does the file end with .md? If it does, open it. Otherwise, it's not the right file type. So I missed a step there. Basically, what's happening is we're giving it a file name, and the file name must equal md. Okay, so we can put here must. We can put some things here. File name must end with .md. Okay, fine. Right. Then in order to get down here, result evaluate tickets. Let's go to evaluate ticket. Right. Okay. So this is a little bit complicated, but really it looks more complicated than it is, right? Okay. So effectively, we're iterating through the file, right? So we're reading each line of the file, right? So for example, in our case, we have like a file of, well, we'll call it, I don't know, pwn.md. Let's say we have like a file called like, I don't know, title, some content, right? We're basically going to iterate through each line of the file, okay? So in our case, we're using the enumerate function here. Basically what that means is rather than just iterating through the file, we iterate through it and we also take the index of it. So this is the index and this is the line effectively, okay? So really what we're looking for is the first line, if the first, are we on the first line? If we are, then we're basically saying, if it doesn't start with this, then return false, okay? So we can go ahead and try and build up this as we go along, right? So let's say I go ahead and open up a terminal. Maybe I can do this actually line by line, side by side. Terminal, new terminal, okay, right. If I go ahead and hit Python, free, sky.py. Okay, I actually need to move into the box directory, okay. Python sky.py. Okay, so it's going to say invalid syntax. Perhaps this is actually just using Python or maybe like normal Python. It's quite possible that it doesn't enjoy my syntax. Let's go ahead and, oh, actually, yeah, maybe it should be Python for actually like that. Okay, right. Please enter the path to the ticket file. Okay, it is called pwn.md. Okay, invalid ticket. Well, why did we get an invalid ticket? Well, we can actually look into this. To save time, I'm actually just going to go ahead and just assign this file name to, since it's user input, to file name equals sky equals pwn.py. This will basically save time to do the input, okay? Let's go ahead and run this again. So let's go ahead and go to run and debug, Python file. This is basically run the current Python file. Okay, so it's going to tell us basically where our error is out. Well, actually, in this case, it doesn't throw an error, but we can actually follow the code, really. This isn't exactly necessary. You can actually read each line by line and figure out what's going on. But for the sake of learning, let's go ahead and basically follow each line. Okay, so let's go ahead over to this line. We're going to set a breakpoint. We're going to hit run and debug. Okay, we're going to hit this line in a second. Actually, it doesn't like my file name because I named it wrong, pwnmd. My bad. Let's go ahead and try again. Okay, so here we're hitting this. Let's go ahead and step into it, basically saying let's follow the function. Okay, here we're saying code line equals none. Here you can see the globals and the locals, basically it's saying like what current variables we have access to. If I go ahead and step over this, you'll see that we now have the code line is set to none. And then what we're going to do now is we're then going to have I, which is 0, because obviously I will start at 0 in this case. Is that if I equals 0, which it is, we're going to go into this if statement. If not starts with, so here we can see that x is equal to hashtag title, new line. If it does not, so x dot starts with this basically says, does this x, which is basically our line, start with this? And it's saying if it doesn't, so basically if it doesn't return false, right, we're going to go ahead and hit play, and it's going to basically return false, and then it's not going to work. So let's go ahead and actually change this to be equal to what it wants. So let's go ahead and pass this here. Okay, I'm going to remove the breakpoint and put it a bit higher up here so we can kind of get through it. Go ahead and put it, say, there. Let's run and debug. Okay, in this case, we're going to step over it. This time, we're going to get a false. Indeed, we didn't, because maybe I messed something up. Maybe it's, oh, my bad, it's looking for the first line to be this. Okay. So again, it's really important to follow what it actually wants. Let's have another try. All right, so let's go through. Step over. Does it start with, if it doesn't start with this, return false. In this case, it does start with that, so it shouldn't return false. You can see here it actually went past it. It went over, so basically this went around again. Now we're going to get to here, and oh, we got an error. Interesting. Go ahead and read up what we have up here. So what happened here? Well, we're looking for basically why did it error out? Well, what does it want next? Okay, so if it doesn't start with ticket 2, okay, interesting. Let's go ahead and rerun the code just to see what happened. I'm going to go ahead and just follow the code through. This time I'm going to move it on to this line. Okay, in this case it never met that line, so let's go ahead and move it up a little bit. Put it here. And now let's rerun again. Okay, so if it doesn't start with this, return false. And then here we're going to read the next line. See, the issue is actually there is only one line in our code. So if I now go ahead and add in like a few lines, and we run this again, because see, basically it ended right because the loop ended. So it ended it down here. So the loop ended because we ran out of lines in the file, right? So it's very important to actually understand, okay, what is the actual script doing? Let's go ahead and refresh this. I could, of course, basically go through each line and say what each one's done, but I find the debugging a little bit easier to kind of just give you the intuition. Okay, let's go ahead and step over. Okay, now we're on to 0. Well, it isn't 0 because I is 1. To the next one, is I equals 1. If it doesn't start with this, then return false. Okay, let's go ahead and let it run through anyway. We're going to get a false. Yep. Let's go ahead and take this. Let's go ahead and drop it in here. So basically saying, does line 1 equal ticket 2? In our case, it doesn't in this case, but now it does. Go ahead and restart. Okay, we're back to where we were. Let's go ahead and run this through. If I equals 1, check this next line. In this case, because it now equals ticket 2, now we can move on to the next part. Print destination, and then basically we're taking some stuff. Let's try and see what's happening here. Right, okay, so we have, we're basically joining a bunch of data together, right? Let's try and figure out what the heck's actually going on. Let's go ahead and first of all just let it run and see what comes out. So we got nothing on the destination. So let's go ahead and try and figure out what's going on. Go ahead and cancel this. So basically, we need to, in order for us to understand what's actually going on under the hood, we need to understand what we're actually doing. Okay. So basically, we're going to be working from the inside out. So in our case, we have the x variable. In our case, the x variable. Actually, let's just put a breakpoint here so we can actually see what's on the x variable, and run it again so we can actually see what's going on. So in our case, ticket 2 is this. We're basically joining on every space. We're joining and we're putting spaces in between each one. So we have x, we're basically stripping, and then we're splitting on every space, and then we're taking the third index plus, basically looking for every space. In our case, it's going to be like space 1, space 2, space 3, and we're taking the third index. We can actually go ahead and basically see what it's pulling out there. If we go ahead and say add in some data here, ticket to let's say Tokyo, hit save, and we run it again, you should see now that it's actually going to take this out, and now it's going to print Tokyo, destination to Tokyo. Because it doesn't want to include the ticket to, it just wants to take basically the location. Let's go ahead and refresh. Let's go ahead and hit next, and now we have Tokyo. Basically what it's doing is it's taking, say, first space, second space, third space, I want this data, right? And it's saying everything afterwards too. If I go ahead and like say Tokyo, please, because maybe it has maybe it's 2 words. We go ahead and hit next. And now we have Tokyo, please. Basically it's saying I want everything after this space. Alright, cool. So what's next? So go ahead and hit next. And it's saying if it starts with ticket code, line +1. And basically it's just going to go in a loop for a while. In this case, we don't have a ticket code. So basically we want to go ahead and we want to have a look at what's going on here. So if the code line and I is equal to the code line, we want to look for something. So basically we need a ticket code, right? What it's saying basically is that the code line in our case is none. We need to make it basically equal to say 2. For example, our I in this case is just going to be looping to be 2. It's never actually going to go up because there's not that many in there. It's just going to stick at 2, so it's 3 now. So it's going to go in a loop basically until it hits the code line, in which case it's never going to actually work because we're not actually setting code line to be equal to anything. Let's go ahead and add in this little bit of code here. So basically what it will do is it will, if it starts, it will basically plus it. You'll see how it works in a minute. Go ahead and hit paste here. Okay, let's go ahead and refresh. Let's go ahead and remove this one and just go into this one. Let's go ahead and hit refresh. Okay, now you can see code line is equal to none. If I go over it, and then again, you'll see that code line is now equal to 3. Basically what it does is it takes the current I, which in our case is 2, plus 1, and then it's going to run over one more time. Now you see that I is going to be incremented to 3. See now I is 3 because we have passive one more iteration of our loop. Go ahead and go to the next. And now it's going to skip across here because basically we're not looking at this current line. If code line and I is equal to this, now we're into this loop. Okay, interesting. So what do we need now? So basically now we've gotten to this part of this if statement. We're going to go into it. So next, if not start, if x doesn't start with this, then return false. We basically need to put in some data here. Okay, go ahead and hit this here. If it doesn't start with this, so we're actually looking, in this case we're looking at I3, so maybe we want to put the stars on this line, but we'll find out in a minute at least. Let's go ahead and hit next. We're going to get false because basically it doesn't start with 2 stars, and it's going to error out. Okay, let's go ahead and refresh. Go ahead and jump over again. In our case, is it going to return false? No, it didn't, because basically it's saying, does this line equal the 2 stars? If it does, we're not returning false. Move on to the next one. Ticket code, replace this with nothing, okay? And we want to split on the plus sign, okay? And then take the 0th index. What that means basically is, I want to go ahead and just draw it real quick. So we have, say, the stars, like that. They will then be removed. And then it's going to, okay, let's say we have, like, say, the stars. And then we have, like, a number, so 2 plus 1, for example. What's going to happen is we're going to replace these here. So we're basically going to get rid of these. And then we're then going to take, then we're going to split on the plus. So basically, this will be 2 and this will be 1, and then take the 0th index, which will be this in our case. So then we end up with just 2. Let's go ahead and try that. So if I go ahead and go onto my click, into my pwn, if I go ahead and I'll put, like, say 2 plus 1, and then I go ahead and refresh. Let's go ahead and just move this along to here. Cool. Let's go ahead and now you can see x is ** 2 + 1. Let's go ahead and hit next. And now we have ticket code 2. Basically what it's done is it has removed this. It has split on the plus and the 1. And then made it into 2. I'll go ahead and draw that again just for sake. So we have the stars. We have the 2. We have the 1. And that doesn't really look like a 2, but I probably should use my pen for this, but it's a bit easier right now to use this. We have the 2. We're going to remove these, so... Oh, damn, wrong button right there. Can I undo that? I don't know. Okay, anyways. ** 2 + 1. First thing we do is we remove the stars as part of the thing. We then split this into 2 based on the plus, and then we take the 0 index, and that's 1 index. We then take the 0th index, and then we end up with just 2. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's get back to it. So if I now were to go into the next part, we should now say, okay, so now our ticket code is 2. So now we're saying if 2 mod 7 equals 4, we let in this. So mod basically is looking for the remainder, right? So let's say that we have like 10, and then we do the mod of so we'd like to mod say 9. We're going to get 1. Basically, it's looking for the remainder. Effectively, what it is it's 10 minus 9 in this sense. But let's say that the number is like 100. Mod 9. Well, what do we get? Well, actually, what we're doing is we're trying to say how many times can we fit 9 into 100, and then we take the remainder. In our case, it'd be like 90, then a 99, which just means it would be 1. In our case, I mean, to fair, 10 times 10 is going to be the same regardless. But anyway, in our case, we're looking for 7, mod 7, right? So let's go ahead and just clear this, clear screen. So what will give us 4 basically. So let's say I need the remainder to be 4. Let's say like 10 mod 7 equals 3, because basically if you take 7 away from 10, you're going to get 3. If you do 11 mod 7, you're going to get 4. So really 11 is the magical number in this case. You could also do, say, like 74. That would also probably work. Let's go ahead and move on anyways. Alright, so basically our number used to be like, say, 74. So we don't actually need the plus, but for the sake of ease, I'm going to keep it in there. Let's go ahead and try this. So let's put in 74. Cool. Let's go ahead and hit refresh. You can see here that our x is 74. Go ahead and now we're in there, ticket code 74. Now if we go ahead and hit this, we should now be in this internal code block, because basically, as I say, 74 mod 7 is 4. Because basically saying how many times can I fit 7 into 74? 10 times, what is the remainder? 4. Okay, cool. Interesting enough, actually, mod is kind of related to RSA encryption and decryption when it comes to basically private keys and the public keys, and how they're generated with the with basically the modulus, and like trying to see how many times you can fit it in there. It's all very interesting. So yeah, there's also some extended Euclidean stuff in there as well. It gets very complicated about trying to actually find the root after that. Anyways, enough about that. Let's move on to the next part. So validation number equals eval. Basically, eval in Python, it doesn't tell us in this case, annoyingly actually, but basically eval, okay, evaluate the given source in the context of globals and locals. Basically what that means is we can pass it, say, 1 + 1, and it will give us 2. We can give it, say, 1 = 1, and it will say true because 1 is equal to 1. Or 100 plus 100 equals 200. Basically, we'll evaluate your statement. You can also pass in Python code, but in our case, we have to be a bit careful because, see, this has to be like, we have to kind of be careful as to what we can actually pass into it. We need to basically have to get our Python code into this. But we'll worry about it in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and script this to do the work for me. Okay, so basically we're going to take, we're actually moving back a little bit here, actually. We're actually taking the validation number. We're actually taking the x. X is actually like this, basically. We're actually going back to here. We're removing the stars, and then we're getting 74 plus 0 new line. And then we're evaluating it, okay? So let's go ahead and basically write a little bit of code basically to do the work for us. So I only massively care about this little bit of code here. This is all that really matters right now. Really a case of just getting that to work, because other than the other stuff can be ignored really. Let's go ahead and take the code anyways. Let's go ahead and put I don't know pwn.py, so you may have that already. Cool. All right, let's go ahead and just unindent this stuff. Okay, so we don't need this. We don't really need this because the act equals input. Okay, cool. Go ahead, add a while loop in there. While true. Cool. Go ahead and just check this for clarity. So basically, x will be equal to our input. Well, actually, what we're going to do is we're going to be actually we'll keep it how it is for now actually, and then we're going to replace the stars and then split on the plus. That should be okay, yeah, and then we're then going to evaluate it. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and try this, right? So now that we have basically a rough idea as to what we need to do, let's go ahead and exit out the SSH. Let's go ahead and do, I'm going to use RL wrap again, because basically it makes life a little bit easier. It just makes things cleaner. Pwn.py. Okay, so if I now need to follow the basic thing I had followed before with the stars, move this a little bit to the right. Basically just want to take this as an example, hit paste there, and nothing happens. Okay, because I haven't actually had it included in the input. I need to go ahead and add in a little bit of input basically just to steer me in the right direction. Basically it's going to be like print true, and then we'll know basically if the error is out, otherwise print false. It should probably be okay. We'll see anyways. Let's go ahead and try again. So if I do like 74 plus 0, we get true, but if I try like say 72, we're going to get false. Okay, doesn't massively matter in this case, but say if we do like this, but then we do like something that doesn't work like AAA, we're going to get an error basically. It's not going to like that, so we have to obviously work a little bit around it. Okay, so let's go ahead and try anyway. So let's go ahead and stick to what we were before. So that gives us false, but then if I do that, we get a false as well. What if I try like, I don't know, bunch of A's, we get false. Not quite what I was looking for. I was hoping it would actually eval would throw some errors at me. Unfortunately, it is not. Perhaps it's because I'm not sure. Let's try 1. Let's try 1 0 divided 1 divided by 1. I was hoping it was going to give me basically some error that we passed in, some invalid input. Let's go ahead and just see if this wants to actually work. So basically our input, when it evaluates, should equate to being something like this. That isn't going to work there, so we need to basically go ahead and add in the stars. Isn't going to work either. Let's go ahead and keep working through, add in the stars. Plus, we get a false. Go ahead and 4 in there. Okay, we're getting an invalid syntax. This is basically because our eval statement doesn't know what to do with this information. It's basically saying like 74. The actual eval statement is just going to receive this 74 plus equals 72. That isn't going to work. Say if we do like 74 plus 1 equals 72, we're going to get that out as true. But really, what we would want is say like this is actually going to give us a false. If I then do like say plus 1 divided by 0, maybe that will then give us an error. Yeah, so here we're getting an error. Basically, as I'm not saying very well, the eval statement is actually doing our code. It's actually executing this as Python. Like that's why I can't divide by 0, because basically it's actually evaluating it. So how do I actually make something of this, right? Like how do I actually escalate this? So initially when I did this, basically I was like, okay, so basically I need to import my own like reverse shellcode or some kind of way to escalate to a bin bash shell. And really it's a case of working with the eval statement. So in my case, for example, I might try like, okay, I want to do like, say, so in Python, you can basically import stuff. I want to basically just try to see how this would work, right? So basically this will, Python uses the Python interpreter to interpret Python, and this is a way of referring to the import. So here we have like import up here, in here like import. Well, basically this is the way that Python can refer to itself. We go ahead and enter, we're getting invalid syntax because basically the eval is getting, this is input and this is input. But you know, like, it doesn't know what to do this. It's like, well, what the hell do I do with this? Like, I'm supposed to evaluate this. Like, how do I actually do this? So you can do, what you can do is you can then add in like an and, for example, and then that will then kind of work. Especially if you try and like put in like subprocess, you get an error because basically it's actually importing subprocess. You know, like it actually is working in a way. So let's go ahead and try and push this a little bit forward. So now we know the import process subprocess works. We want to basically go ahead and get a little bit further. So we want to go ahead and like use the get output function, which is within subprocess. And simply all we're doing is we're just kind of working down here. So for example, you know how like base64 has this base64 function. Basically the same thing, except in this case we have get output. And then I want to basically see, can I get the output or something? So in my case, I want to try and do something like touch pwn.txt. Hit enter. Okay, did anything happen? Okay, we have a pwn.txt. Interesting. Let's go ahead and try like touch pwn.txt, pwn1337.txt. Okay, do we have a pwn? Yeah, so that is actually doing what we want it to do. Now, hopefully, when I copied the code over, that has actually worked correctly, and I haven't like fudged anything along the way. That should be okay. I don't believe it. Yeah, it should be okay. But when I initially did this box, I actually had to kind of balance out. Maybe I will have to in this example as well. I had to basically add in some equals over here like that for it to work. Maybe my fudged code actually works despite that. I'm going to go ahead and try it with the real one and see what happens, basically. Let's go ahead and just give it a try. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and pass it into the real code. Go ahead and right click this, copy, and we're going to put it into pwnmd. I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to change this to be a POC. I'll put it on a subscribe. Okay, let's go ahead and hit save. So right now I don't have a subscribe out of that sub. You know, I don't have anything outright. No, there's nothing. So if we run this now, if it works, basically it will tell us the code has worked. Okay, let's go ahead and remove this breakpoint. Let's go ahead and hit refresh. Okay, we're getting an error. This is not support between instances of string and int. We're getting an error there, but let's go ahead and look at over here. I mean, we got an error later on, but it doesn't mean they didn't actually work. Here we go. Yeah, so subscribe.txt actually worked. Okay, so that works. So where do we go from here? Well, let's try ahead and do something else, right? So let's go ahead and try, say, importing, say, like bin bash or something. Or maybe like get output of like, say, cat etc password. I want to see basically, will it actually read that? We don't actually get any output in this case, since it's actually stored in the variable and we actually can't see it, which is unfortunate. But that's no worries. What we can do is we can go ahead and try some nifty tricks. Rather than a reverse shell, which is quite common, I'm going to use a different approach where I'm actually going to make myself a suid bash shell. So in my case, I'm not running as root, but what I can do just to make this kind of work, just to see for proof of concept, I'm going to go ahead and run it as root. So sudo, let's go ahead and run this now. So let's go ahead and actually lost my command history. It's unfortunate. I want to go ahead and basically just test this locally, because testing it locally is much easier than testing it remotely, in the sense of actually having access to all of the, you know, knowing actually what's going on in the hood. Okay, so right, let's go ahead and clear this. All right, so right, let's get a move on. Right, so in order to do basically to create a suid shell, I basically want to cp bin bash over to my current directory. I want to cp bin bash from where it is to where I am right now. So for example, we just go to bash dot root bash, and we want to then chmod basically change the mode of that binary to basically be the current user and suid, and then we want to basically set to root bash, and then go ahead and hit enter. We got true. Let's go ahead and now do ls-la, and now we have a root bash that's owned by root that we can run. If we now do say root, root bash, I'm actually now running as Kali. Didn't quite go how I expected that to. Okay. So why didn't that work? Well, the reason it didn't work is actually because we didn't tell it to run it as a root, right? So I'm pretty sure if I now do the same, but I can escape out here. If I now use the -p flag, which basically means preserve, like this, and I now hit ID, we should not, yeah, we have an effective UID of root. What it means basically is that we can now run things as root. So for example, now I can do like cat, things I couldn't usually do, like Etsy shadow, right? That will actually work, and we'll go ahead and just take the first, I don't know, we'll take, I don't know, do like wussy, and you can see here that basically how big it is. If we didn't have access, we couldn't do that normally. So that basically works in terms of, you know, getting us a root shell. Let's go ahead and basically try that too. So let's go ahead and take this, copy, paste. I'm going to go ahead into pwn.md. Go ahead and do that here. Go ahead and copy. Go ahead into my SSH. So should be in here somewhere. SSH development app box. Go ahead and actually grab the password, which I have lost, unfortunately. No, that's annoying. Go ahead and click the, yep, cool, and then just go db.php. Take the password. That's the benefit of obviously scripting it. Just so smooth, you can obviously just tell what you want, and then you're good. Cool. Go ahead and exit out here. Go ahead and SSH. Go ahead and root this out of the way. Paste, and we should be in. Cool. Now go ahead and where are we? Contract.txt. We should be okay to touch files in here. Can we touch files in here? We can indeed. Cool. Go ahead and now take this. Actually, we want the whole thing. Echo the whole contents. Oh, they didn't like that. Go ahead and actually just we're in SSH. We'll call it pwn.md. Go ahead and paste it in here. Cool. It did paste. It just is at the top. Just check it works. Yep, cool. So that's good to me. Cool. Now we can go ahead and run that sudo. So sudo -l. Go ahead and run this. Sudo. Paste this. pwn.md. Okay, we've got an error, but it doesn't matter because we should have a root.bash in here. Root bash -p enter ./root bash.php -p id. We are root. We are development, but we are running as root. Cat Etsy shadow, and there we go. We have the shadow. So let's go ahead and explore real quick why that worked. So let's go ahead and do man bash real quick. And then we can probably grep, or maybe not. We can actually go ahead and look at the p flag, which is in here somewhere. Basically, it means preserve the current profile, I think. Preserve the privileges. Should be in here somewhere. I guess it isn't. That's fine. We'll go ahead and Google it. Bash manual -p. Hopefully this will give me what I'm after. -p. Argument. Simply just Googling till you find what you're after, really. It's various flags and bash. Cool. Maybe this is what I'm after. Okay. Oh, parrot. Is it gonna give me what I'm after? No, it isn't. There should be a -p in there, basically, that should give me what I'm after. Let's go ahead and Google Docs this in text. Clearly, I'm just not finding the right thing here. Maybe this is what I'm after. -p. No, not POSIX. Yeah, so this is what I'm looking for. Basically, what it's looking for, if the shell is started with the effective user group, the ID equals current. Basically, what it does is it will run the command as the effective user versus the current user. If the p action is supplied at invocation start behavior is the same, but the effective user ID is not reset. Basically, when you run binbash, your effective user is reset. In our case, the -p preserves that. Couldn't find a nice way to explain that, unfortunately. I guess the docs just didn't explain it very nicely. Hopefully there's a nice way to find this, but it should be in here somewhere, I guess. Maybe it's that POSIX thing, but I'm not really sure. The point is, anyway, I found somewhere in previous events where this was a way to get around things, and I like it because it basically means you can do it all locally. There's no need for reverse shell. And let's say you did want a reverse shell, go ahead and do that anyways. So let's go ahead and go into the nano.pwn.md, go ahead and just basically change this code to be something else. In our case, we can just run, like, say something simple, like I'm going to go ahead and type in shells 1337, go ahead and basically just take a very basic shell. This will do. Copy, paste, save, go ahead and then run this again, sudo pwn.md. We should then have a shell. We do indeed. ID, and we're running as root. So yeah, in this case, really, it's a case of, different ways to do the same thing. I showed you the way to basically get a suid bash shell. So you can obviously get a root bash file that you can use anytime you want on the local machine, as well as also reverse shell, which is just a classic. Video kind of went a bit longer than I was hoping it would do, but that's okay. Hopefully you learned something with me going into more detail than normal. But just to finalize, when it comes to reading scripts, really, it's a case of, I pretty much solved this challenge by just reading the code. But it also helps if you have if you have a debugger and you can just step through the code and be like, why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? Because, nothing's going to run Python like Python. I mean, yeah, as good as you are in your head, you're going to obviously be able to read it and figure out what's going on. But, some things are weird, like reading this and trying to figure out what the heck's going on is like, it's fine, but if it's really complicated, you might be like, oh, I know what's going on just based on the new output versus, trying to decipher what this is or bits and pieces, So yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Again, this is more of a beginner's video. You could probably have done the speed for the speed run for this video in like a minute or two. But hopefully my time to hit the detail in there was beneficial. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye.